I am not the biggest superhero movie girly. The only introduction that I've had to Superman was the Justice League animated series, with some glances of the Christopher Reeve Superman from time to time in my childhood, and the Snyder films in my early adulthood. Of course, he's a pop culture icon, but overall, my understanding of the character was very basic. So when I found out that they're making yet another Superman movie, I almost wasn't going to watch this film, let alone review it. However, I was intrigued that James Gunn was going to take over this next installment. I did enjoy the Guardians trilogy, and I'm a big fan of the first live-action Scooby-Doo movie. By looking at the trailers, Superman was going to have a little bit of a lighter tone, and I have to admit, I got pretty excited. But what intrigued me the most, this wasn't going to be another Superman origin story, and instead, James Gunn was going to take it to a deeper level, making references to it being an immigrant story. And even though that was a controversial statement, I was hyped. I love a good allegory. As I was scrolling through Film Talk and Filmgram, there was a lot of debates and discourse about whether or not this movie was going to work. Was it still going to be light and escapist while still mirroring the society that we live in? Was it going to be preachy, and was it going to be too political? Was it going to be quote unquote woke? Did James Gunn just make all of this up? And is Superman actually really that deep? But to my surprise, Superman has always been that deep. And we are going to discuss that in this episode of Tea and Popcorn, where movies are that deep. I'm your host, Megan, and welcome to this virtual tea party and movie club. Without further ado, let's talk about Superman. When James Gunn said that this was an immigrant story, I was not surprised by that. I am familiar with Superman's origin of being an alien, sent from Krypton to Earth, raised by the Kents, and having a new identity, and leading this double life trying to blend in as Clark Kent, but he's ultimately Superman who tries to save the world. So to me, yeah, the allegories were very clear, but it had me thinking, was that always the intent of the character? What was the history behind the story of Superman? I talked to Dan, also known as Real Takes, on Instagram and TikTok, who recently did a series of commentary videos about Superman. So I asked him about the history.
Superman, when he was created, it was, I think, 1938. And, it was basically two Jewish guys that came up with him. Both of their parents were immigrants. One from, I think, Lithuania. His parents were basically running away from what the Russians were doing to Jews at the time and the anti-Semitism in Russia. That's kind of where they came up in. Obviously, it's right before the Holocaust. There's kind of rising anti-Semitism in Europe. So they create this character that is Moses. He is Moses. He's basically put in something and sent away from the destruction of his people and told to find a new home. That's what he is. He's given the strength of Samson from the Bible, and he's kind of given the mission of the golem. So it's a very Jewish character. And I talked about how David Cornsweet, he's the first Jewish guy to play the character in a moment where there's so much going on, obviously, with Israel, and there's a lot of complicated feelings in the world, and I think it's important, especially given what the movie has to say. So I think it was a great time for that, but that's who the character was. And I think he's been kind of turned and twisted a lot of different ways, but that's who he is at the core.
I was super surprised about the origins of Superman. The origins are literally in the DNA of the comics. But speaking of that, I also want to know if these themes are prevalent in the comics themselves. So I talked to Hugh V, who knows a lot about comics, way more than I do. There is a lot of misconceptions about what the source material actually is, especially with people that mostly rely on the movies to kind of learn more about these characters. And that's kind of where there is a bit of controversy with this, about Superman being an immigrant, which is basically talked about in sources like Smallville, and then also some another Superman show years ago.
And literally Superman comics. It's literally
in comics too. So what's your thought on people thinking that James Gunn just made this stuff up?
Google is free. I'm just gonna state that right now. It's just with the power of the internet, where you can literally search up and do your own research, much like what James Gunn literally did himself, people have the ability to go and look into this stuff to kind of see is what he's talking about correct? Because he mentions all the time the exact source material that he's using. He mentions All-Star Superman. He mentions this comic from this time. And it's just like, okay, you can literally go and either you can rent them online, you can find them in store, you can literally look up summaries of it, look up the different themes and stuff, because I mean, you can do that for books if you want, but the fact is that Superman, ever since his literal conception, has always been, yes, an immigrant character. Or some can argue more of a refugee character, because considering the stuff, which, I mean, okay, that's a fair point. But, I mean, the point still stands, is that he is someone that is not from Earth, and he was someone that was, in a sense, kept hidden from the world, and was like, yeah, and he was never, and even like the Kents even went as far as to, like, of course, create an identity for him and all that he was not necessarily a legally born kid and all that. So there is elements of that. And on top of that, he's always been a political figure.
So it isn't new that Superman has covered a lot of themes, and even diving deeper into cultural or even political commentary, or at least commentary that reflects current events. Not to dive too deep into any spoilers of the film, but there is a slight reference of the conflict of Israel and Palestine in this film, which of course is a very timely and sensitive topic that honestly has been happening for literal decades. But in the comics, has Superman actually tackled similar subjects?
Oh yeah, 100%. Obviously, much like this movie does, it is done with fictional countries most of the time. They do tend to kind of like use fictionalized nations to kind of represent others, because usually they're kind of afraid of offending someone if they do actually use a specific country and all that. And funny enough, that's the same case for Marvel as well. Like, Marvel sometimes invents fictional country to kind of like include certain stuff so that the way they don't really directly offend anyone. But yeah, there is usually a lot where it happens to have conflicts between various countries and stuff, some fictional and not. And then sometimes it's usually Superman or other superheroes in general who end up being the ones that kind of like stop the conflict. Not every hero does it. It's only like certain ones who believe that that believe stopping global conflict is the best way forward. And Superman has always been one of those. He's someone that doesn't believe in bloodshed on both sides. He's someone that does not believe in casualties. So he first, of course, gives a fair warning, like wants to, like, he goes like, hey, just cut it out, guys, essentially. Not obviously not in that way. But then, of course, then he does kind of step in, using his strength, using his powers, but never by lethal means. Never. He doesn't hurt anyone. He makes sure that someone doesn't get injured, and just make sure to like end the conflict here and there, and make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Mm-hmm. There's usually property damage, but that's it.
Literally, yeah, that's the whole thing, is that he's someone that doesn't like to be extremely violent. He is essentially a pacifist who tries his best to kind of de-escalate as much as he can. You have this man who's like going as far as to make sure that every single person who's in the surrounding area isn't safe. No kid or even squirrels.
I was about to say.
It's literally, it's like, yeah, nothing is too troublesome for him to take care of.
Prior to my seeing this movie, I saw a lot of people say, oh, Superman went woke. We don't want Superman to go woke. Whatever that means. So I went into this film expecting something kind of heavy and kind of preachy and things being hammered down. The political commentary, if you want to call it that, seemed very base level. It actually made me question, is this actually as heavy or as woke as people are saying it is? Because it didn't feel that way to me. I'm like, this is just a walk in the park compared to a lot of the other films that I've seen with heavier commentary. Honestly, Superman isn't really a quote-unquote woke film. Creator Fantastic Frankie breaks this down very well in her video.
I need to stop saying that Superman is woke as a comeback. I see the impulse to use it as a retort, especially when we see so many of these heads saying the word as a way to critique it. I feel like by saying yes, Superman is woke, for one, furthering the misinterpretation of the word, but two, we're also establishing that the themes of kindness and empathy are revolutionary and unknown in nature. Now, for a quick history lesson, the term woke was created by Black people and was used primarily for people who recently became aware at the extent of systematic oppression in this country. They were awakened to injustices, as it were. And And then buttheads and racists co-opted the word and used it as a dog whistle for diversity. And let's be true, this movie is pretty white. I'm not saying it's not diverse. Obviously, there are women with prominent roles and people of color. Fundamentally, this film and this message is about kindness. And I know it's easy to assign our own politics to this film. And I'm not saying that the conclusions that we're drawing from this message is not here, because absolutely they are. But honestly, as someone who's read so many Superman stories, especially recently to prepare for this film, fictional political conflict that we see, the themes and the message that we get from him and Lex and billionaires and their dangers are prevalent themes of Superman that's been going on for the last 50 years. And so instead of saying that it's woke, suggesting that this is a new Superman that's bringing in these themes, should be retorting, read a book. This is not the Watchmen series where a moment in history that was buried got illuminated to the country. This is regular hero work, morality questions.
Because Dan also covers politics within his content, I also want to hear his perspective on this.
This movie is not preachy. It's just base level Superman. I said, this is the text of Superman. Like, this is what the character is. It's like saying that, like, being upset that, you know, X-Men, all that stuff was made out of, like, the civil rights movement. That's what it is. Like, that's what the story is about. Like, if you don't like that, that's okay. But someone addressing that or just having that as, like, a general theme in an X-Men movie isn't woke or anything. It's just, maybe you don't like the storytelling if you can't appreciate that aspect. Like, that stuff's not for you then. Like, but don't act like it's now changed because it stayed the same.
I was hearing a lot of commentary about people wanting escapism and wanted something light, and why does everything have to be so politicized? But I think this film, even though it does mirror topics that are pretty serious in nature, it leaves you with hope and with escapism, because ultimately it is a superhero movie and it does not feel emotionally exhausting. James Gunn blends comedy and drama seamlessly. Some people think it's actually too light for the subject matters. I personally have to disagree. I think the tone was very balanced, and I think media like this is a really great entry point into discussing bigger topics and serious topics. That's actually why I love film commentary. That's why I like doing deep dives, and I like watching other creators do deep dives. But I think it's fine for it to be surface level, because this is like a family film, really.
Yeah, I agree. And like this, I think it's very much was geared towards something that like kids would be able to watch and stuff. But I think you also, like, I think there's also a balance of not making stuff so heavy-handed that it turns off people on one side. Like, you want to make something that like maybe can get through and connect to someone who might not necessarily agree with you. I think that's kind of an ideal thing. And I think sometimes like stuff that's political, which again, I don't think this is, gets lost in that way. And it's like, you can't even reach people that you'd be making a difference, just kind of speaking to your own echo chamber, right? Like that's obviously a very difficult balance, but yeah, I think it was beautiful. I think the point is, I like that it makes a point to say, he says, I'm not representing America. This is not, anyone's telling me to do this. I'm doing this because I want to. Like, this is right. And I think that's very much the point where, like, you know, if someone like Superman appeared here today, where would he go? Like, we would be in Sudan. He'd be in God. Like, he would go there and he would probably try to help, because, and it's not about politics or race or religion or anything. It's about, this is wrong. And that's it. So I like that they made that clear too.
And who says that superhero movies have to be popcorn flicks, or that DC films always have to be dramatic and Marvel films always have to be exciting and light? Now, at this point, maybe the pendulum is going to shift. Who knows? But overall, I think this film is fantastic with its characterization of Superman. You really get to know his character very well, especially with David Cornsweet's performance. We also get to see Lex Luthor with an amazing performance by Nicholas Hoult. And both of those characters really represent facets of society. But not only that, we also get amazing side characters who are given given their time to shine, which is going to open up to other installments, which I cannot wait for. But ultimately, the message of Superman as a film is about kindness and looking out for the little guy. Kindness isn't woke, it's punk rock in this dark society. Ultimately, kindness and caring for each other is what makes us human to the core, no matter where we're from. For the full conversations with Hugh and Dan, they're actually going to be podcast episodes on the podcast version of Tea and Popcorn. You can listen to them wherever you get your podcasts or in the link in the description, as well as links to their social, so definitely give them a follow. If you like more superhero commentary videos, I highly recommend checking out Fantastic Frankie. She's amazing. This is her wheelhouse. Definitely give her a follow. Her socials are linked in the description as well. If you like videos like this, give this video a like. It lets me know that you want more of this content, pushes this video to cinephiles like yourself. Subscribe to the channel and join the virtual tea party and movie club. And if you like video essays, check out this video on Tick Tick Boom and the anxieties about turning 30. I will see you next time. Bye bye.